What frustrates you the most is that you can sense these deeper wealth laws exist, but they're not taught in schools. They're not discussed in financial planning. They're not found on YouTube videos. They're not even mentioned in most manifestation teachings. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today we're going to talk about the forgotten wealth laws. Ancient manifestation secrets are finally revealed. Every financial guru, every manifestation coach, every wealth expert you've ever listened to has been teaching you backwards. While you have been using affirmations and vision boards, the real wealth secrets have been sitting in ancient temples, buried libraries, and forgotten texts for thousands of years. Today, I'm going to expose why modern society had to bury these secrets to maintain control over your financial destiny. You see, there's a reason why ancient Egypt's wealth lasted over 3,000 years, while modern millionaires lose everything in a single market crash. There's a reason why traditional societies had virtually no homelessness or starvation, while today 80% of lottery winners go broke within 5 years. There's a reason why the harder you chase money using modern methods, the more it seems to run from you. The ancients understood something we've forgotten. Wealth isn't created through force, manipulation, or endless hustle. It flows according to specific universal laws that were once common knowledge, but have been systematically erased from your collective memory. These weren't abstract philosophical concepts. They were practical, tested systems used by Egyptian pharaohs, Hindu merchants, Sufi mystics, and Celtic druids to create sustainable abundance that lasted generations. But here's what's really disturbing. This knowledge wasn't lost by accident. It was deliberately buried. When the Library of Alexandria burned, it wasn't just books that were destroyed. It was the complete blueprint for creating wealth in harmony with natural law. When indigenous cultures were conquered, their prosperity wisdom was branded as primitive superstition. When ancient trade routes were disrupted, the wealth consciousness that sustained them was replaced with systems of scarcity and control. Today, you're going to reclaim what is rightfully yours. I'm going to reveal 13 forgotten wealth laws that predate every modern financial system, every contemporary manifestation technique, every current economic theory. These laws work because they align with how the universe actually operates, not how we've been conditioned to think it operates. And if you watch until the end, you will understand why you've been struggling financially despite doing everything right. And more importantly, you'll have the ancient keys to unlock the abundance that is your birthright. You're watching this because something inside you knows that the wealth laws you've been taught are incomplete. You probably tried the conventional approaches, budgeting, investing, side hustles, even some manifestation techniques. And while they may have helped to some degree, you sense there are deeper principles at work that nobody talks about anymore. You're here because you noticed something fascinating. Throughout history, certain individuals and entire civilizations seemed to understand something about wealth that we have lost. They've created abundance that lasted for generations, not just quick wins that disappeared with the next economic downturn. They had access to wealth laws that were once common knowledge, but have somehow been forgotten by our modern world. Deep down, what you really want isn't just more money, using the same struggling methods everyone else uses. You want to understand how wealth actually works at its deepest level. You want to access the same principles that allowed ancient Egyptian dynasties to prosper for thousands of years, that enabled medieval guildmasters to create sustainable abundance, that helped indigenous cultures live in harmony with natural prosperity cycles. You sense that there are forgotten wealth laws operating in the background of reality. Laws that, when understood and applied, make everything else you do more powerful. You're tired of feeling like you're working against invisible forces, when you could be working with them. You recognize that the most successful people throughout history weren't just lucky or more talented. They were operating according to principles that had been systematically removed from modern education. What frustrates you the most is that you can sense these deeper wealth laws exist, but they're not taught in schools. They're not discussed in financial planning. They're not found on YouTube videos. They're not even mentioned in most manifestation teachings. It's as if there's a whole layer of wealth wisdom that's been deliberately kept hidden or simply forgotten over time. You want to understand why some people seem to effortlessly attract wealth, while others struggle despite following all the conventional advice. You want to know what the ancients understood about prosperity that we have lost. You want to access the complete system of wealth laws, not just the surface level techniques that everyone else is teaching. What if I told you that these forgotten wealth laws still exist, preserved in ancient texts, spiritual traditions, and the practices of cultures that understood abundance as a natural state? What if the reason you haven't achieved the financial freedom you desire isn't because the laws don't work, but because you've only been taught a fraction of them? Today, you're going to discover the complete system that your ancestors used to create lasting prosperity. To understand why these forgotten wealth laws work when modern methods fail, we need to examine what happened to wealth consciousness throughout history. Because what you're about to discover isn't just individual techniques, it's evidence of a systematic removal of prosperity knowledge from human civilization. Consider this: ancient Egypt maintained wealth and stability for over 3,000 years. 3,000 years. That's longer than recorded history for most civilizations. The Roman Empire generated abundance for centuries. The Mayan civilization created prosperity that sustained millions. Yet today, our so-called advanced economies collapse every few decades. We experience recessions, depressions, market crashes, and financial crises with predictable regularity. Why? Because ancient civilizations built their wealth on completely different foundations. They understood that true prosperity comes from alignment with natural law, not exploitation of resources or manipulation of markets. Egyptian wealth was based on the Ma'at principle, cosmic balance, and reciprocity. When pharaohs followed these laws, abundance flowed naturally. When they violated them, kingdoms fell. The Romans understood wealth as a form of virtue. They believed prosperity was attracted to excellence of character. The Mayans built their entire economic system around sacred timing and natural cycles. These weren't primitive superstitions, they were sophisticated understandings of how abundance actually operates in the universe. But here's where the story gets disturbing. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria wasn't just about burning books. Yes, we lost countless texts on medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. But what's rarely discussed is that we also lost the complete repository of ancient wealth wisdom. Scrolls that contained the financial practices of successful dynasties, the trading secrets of prosperous merchants, the abundance principles that sustained entire civilizations. Think about what was housed there: Egyptian economic texts that explained how to maintain prosperity for millennia, Greek treatises on virtue-based wealth creation, Babylonian business practices that created the world's first stable currency, Persian manuscripts on sacred timing for financial activities. All of it gone. And this wasn't an accident. Throughout history, whenever traditional cultures were conquered, their wealth wisdom was systematically suppressed. When feudal systems rose to power, they needed populations that would accept scarcity as normal. Abundance consciousness had to be eradicated because people who understand their natural birthright of prosperity are impossible to control. Here's what they didn't want you to know. Poverty consciousness isn't a personal failing. It's historical programming designed to keep populations controllable. For the past 1,000 years, we've been conditioned to believe that scarcity is natural, that most people are meant to struggle, that wealth is only available to a select few. But this directly contradicts everything that traditional societies understood about abundance. Look at the evidence. Traditional societies had virtually no homelessness. Starvation was rare except during natural disasters. Communities took care of their members because they understood that individual prosperity was connected to collective well-being. They operated from abundance consciousness as the default state. Now look at today. 80% of lottery winners go broke within 5 years. Why? Because they haven't been taught the ancient wealth principles that create sustainable prosperity. They get money without wisdom, and money without wisdom always disappears. They try to build wealth on the foundations of scarcity consciousness, and scarcity consciousness cannot hold abundance. We've been taught to think of ancient spiritual traditions as belief systems separate from practical life. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. These traditions were complete economic systems. Hindu Dharma wasn't just philosophy, it was a business model that created prosperity for thousands of years. Sufi mysticism wasn't just religion, it was the foundation of trade networks that spanned continents. Celtic Druidism wasn't just nature worship, it was an economic system based on natural cycles that sustained communities for generations. The difference between ancient wealth and modern wealth is the difference between sustainability and extraction. Ancient wealth was designed to last, to regenerate, to create abundance for generations. Modern wealth is based on extraction, pulling resources out of the earth, out of communities, out of the future, to create temporary abundance for a few. Ancient wealth laws created regenerative prosperity, abundance that actually increased the more it was shared. Modern wealth systems create extractive prosperity, abundance that depletes resources and creates scarcity for others. This is why you've been struggling. You've been trying to create sustainable wealth using extractive methods. You have been trying to build regenerative prosperity on foundations of scarcity consciousness. It's like trying to grow an oak tree in sand. No matter how hard you work, you don't have the right foundation. But here's the remarkable thing. These ancient wealth laws still work. They are still operating in the background of reality, waiting for people who understand how to align with them. The principles that created abundance for Egyptian pharaohs, Roman senators, and Mayan merchants are the same principles that can create abundance for you today. The question isn't whether these laws work. Civilizations were built on them. The question is whether you're ready to abandon the scarcity programming you've inherited and step into the abundance consciousness that is your birthright. Now that you understand how wealth consciousness was systematically removed from human civilization, let's begin restoring it. The first 4 forgotten wealth laws form the foundation of all sustainable prosperity. These aren't theories, they're tested principles that built empires and sustained abundance for thousands of years. Law 1. Sacred exchange, the Egyptian principle of cosmic balance. The ancient Egyptians built their entire economy on a principle called Ma'at, cosmic balance and reciprocity. Ma'at wasn't just a goddess or a philosophical concept, it was the operating system for all wealth creation in Egyptian civilization. They understood that prosperity flows when you give equal or greater value than you receive. Let me tell you about the merchant families of ancient Memphis. These weren't just traders, these were stewards of sacred exchange. The El Amarna tablets record how these merchants prospered for generation after generation, not by maximizing profit, but by ensuring that every transaction left all parties better off than before. They understood that when you create genuine value for others, abundance flows back to you multiplied. Here's how they practiced sacred exchange. Before any business dealing, they would ask 3 questions. First, does this transaction serve the highest good of all involved? Second, am I giving equal or greater value than I'm receiving? And third, will this exchange contribute to the prosperity of my community? Only when all 3 answers were yes would they proceed. This is the exact opposite of modern extraction-based commerce. Today we're taught to maximize profit to get the best deal, to buy low and sell high regardless of the impact on others. But the Egyptians understood that extraction creates scarcity while sacred exchange creates abundance. In practical terms, this means shifting from asking, how can I make the most money, to asking, how can I create the most value? When you focus on genuine value creation, money becomes a natural byproduct rather than a struggle. Law 2. Aligned action. The Hindu path of dharmic wealth. The ancient Hindu tradition gave us one of the most powerful wealth principles ever recorded: Svadharma, or aligned action. This principle states that true prosperity comes not from forcing outcomes, but from aligning your actions with your deepest nature and life purpose. The Bhagavad Gita tells us that when you work according to your Svadharma, your unique contribution to the cosmic order, abundance flows naturally without struggle. This is not an abstract philosophy. It is the foundation of the guild system that created prosperity throughout India for thousands of years. The ancient guilds understood that every person has a unique combination of talents, interests, and spiritual purpose. When you align your wealth-creating activities with this unique combination, you stop working against your nature and start working with it. Instead of forcing prosperity through actions that drain your energy, you create abundance through activities that energize and fulfill you. Here's the key distinction: most people try to create wealth by doing what they think will make money, regardless of whether it aligns with their nature. But aligned action means choosing wealth-creating activities that are in harmony with who you truly are. When you do this, work stops feeling like work and becomes a form of creative expression. This doesn't mean you do what's easy or what you already know how to do. It means you choose challenges and opportunities that call forth your highest potential, that ask you to grow in directions that feel authentic to your deepest self. Law 3. Generous scarcity. The Jewish mystical secrets of giving. The Kabbalistic tradition preserved one of the most counterintuitive wealth laws, the principle of tzedakah, or righteous giving. But this isn't ordinary charity. It's a precise technology for creating abundance through giving when you think you can't afford to give. The ancient rabbis taught that there are two types of scarcity: real scarcity and perceived scarcity. Real scarcity is rare and temporary. It occurs during natural disasters or genuine emergencies. Perceived scarcity is what most people experience most of the time, the feeling that there isn't enough even when their basic needs are met. The mystical understanding is that perceived scarcity is actually an illusion created by consciousness. And the way to break through this illusion is through generous action during times when you feel you can't afford to be generous. They called this tzedakah from scarcity, and they understood it as a spiritual technology for accessing abundance. Here's how it works. When you give from a place of feeling scarce, you're making a statement to the universe that abundance is your true nature. You're acting from faith rather than fear, from trust rather than anxiety. This breaks the scarcity pattern at its root and opens channels for abundance to flow. The key is that the giving must be genuine and meaningful to you, not just a mechanical action. It might be giving time, attention, knowledge, or resources to someone who needs them. The point isn't the specific form of giving. It's the act of moving from contraction to expansion, even when everything in you wants to contract and hold on. Law 4. Effortless accumulation. The Taoist principle of Wu Wei. The ancient Taoist masters understood something profound about wealth creation. The more you force it, the more it resists you. They developed a principle called Wu Wei, effortless action, that allows abundance to accumulate naturally without struggle or manipulation. Wu Wei doesn't mean being passive or lazy. It means aligning your actions with the natural flow of life, rather than swimming against the current. The Taoists observed water and noticed that it always flows to the lowest places, yet it has the power to carve through mountains. They understood that wealth follows the same principle. It flows naturally toward those who serve others and remain humble. The Taoist merchants were famous throughout ancient China for their prosperity and their integrity. They didn't push or pressure their customers. Instead, they focused on understanding what people genuinely needed and providing it with such excellence that customers naturally returned and referred others. This is the opposite of high-pressure sales, manipulation, or trying to convince people to buy what they don't need. Wu Wei in business means creating such genuine value that people are naturally drawn to what you offer. It means building relationships based on trust and service rather than exploitation. In practical terms, effortless accumulation means paying attention to the natural opportunities that arise in your life, rather than forcing outcomes that require tremendous struggle. It means recognizing that when you're aligned with your true purpose and serving others genuinely, the right opportunities appear with perfect timing. These 4 foundation laws work together to create what the ancients called righteous prosperity wealth that comes through alignment with cosmic principles rather than violation of them. When you practice sacred exchange, aligned action, generous scarcity, and effortless accumulation, you're not just creating money, you're creating sustainable abundance that benefits everyone involved. Here's something fascinating that just happened while I was explaining those first 4 laws. I guarantee that at least one of them made you think, that sounds nice in theory, but how does that actually work in the real world? And that reaction, that immediate jump to skepticism, is exactly what I want to talk about right now. Have you ever noticed that the harder you chase money, the more it seems to run from you? It's like trying to catch your own shadow. The faster you move toward it, the faster it moves away. Yet when you're not thinking about money, when you're completely absorbed in something you love or focused on helping someone else, opportunities seem to appear out of nowhere. This is not coincidence. This is one of the fundamental patterns of abundance that the ancients understood, but we've forgotten. They knew that desperation repels prosperity while detachment attracts it. They knew that need energy pushes wealth away while service energy draws it in. And here's what's really interesting. What if your financial struggles aren't personal failures, but just spiritual misalignments? What if every time you struggle with money, it wasn't because you lacked intelligence, discipline, or worthiness, but because you unknowingly violated cosmic principles that govern abundance? Think about it this way. If you planted a seed in concrete and it didn't grow, you wouldn't conclude that you're a terrible gardener. You'd recognize that you were trying to grow something in the wrong environment. Most people are trying to create wealth using methods that violate natural laws of abundance, then blame themselves when it doesn't work. Now, I need to prepare you for what's coming next, because the next laws I'm about to share will reveal layers of manifestation that you may never have encountered before. These principles go far deeper than most approaches you've learned about creating abundance. You may have worked with various manifestation techniques, and perhaps some have been helpful for you. What's fascinating is that the ancient masters who developed the original foundations of these practices understood something additional that often gets overlooked in modern applications. They recognize that manifestation isn't just about clarifying what you want or maintaining positive thoughts, though those can certainly be valuable. The ancients understood that true manifestation happens when you align yourself so completely with cosmic principles that abundance becomes your natural state. They weren't trying to attract specific things. They were focused on becoming the kind of people that abundance naturally flows toward. It's like the difference between occasionally catching fish with a hook and line versus creating an environment where fish naturally want to gather. Both approaches can work, but one creates sustainable, effortless abundance, while the other requires constant effort and often produces inconsistent results. So if you've been working with manifestation practices and want to understand the deeper layers that make them even more powerful, if you've been curious about why abundance flows so easily, for some people while others struggle despite their best efforts. What I'm about to share will provide the missing foundation. The next 5 laws reveal the complete system of manifestation, the authentic practices that mystery schools preserved for thousands of years. These are the principles that explain why manifestation sometimes works brilliantly and sometimes produces mixed results, and more importantly, how to create the internal foundation that makes all your abundant practices more effective. Now we enter the manifestation mysteries, the laws that reveal why internal transformation is the real key to external wealth. These next 5 principles were preserved in ancient mystery schools, and understanding them will fundamentally change how you approach creating abundance. Law 5. Inner alchemy. The ancient Hermetic masters preserved one of the most profound wealth secrets ever recorded. As above, so below, as within, so without. This wasn't mystical poetry, it was a precise formula for understanding how reality actually works. When they spoke of turning lead into gold, they weren't describing the transformation of physical metals. They were teaching the process of transforming your internal relationship with abundance to create external wealth. Here's what this means at the deepest level. Your outer financial reality is an exact reflection of your inner wealth consciousness. Every external circumstance in your financial life is showing you something about your internal relationship with money, value, and abundance. The Hermetic alchemists understood that if you want to change your external financial circumstances permanently, you must first transform the internal patterns that created them. Most people try to create wealth by changing external circumstances while leaving their internal programming unchanged. They get a new job, start a business, or learn investment strategies, but they carry the same internal patterns of scarcity, unworthiness, or fear that created their original financial situation. This is why lottery winners often lose everything. They receive external wealth without internal transformation. The Hermetic alchemists had a specific process for inner alchemy. They understood that most people carry the lead consciousness, heavy, dense patterns of thinking and feeling about money that are rooted in limitation, fear, and scarcity. Through inner alchemical work, you transform this lead consciousness into gold consciousness, patterns of thinking and feeling about wealth that are light, expansive, and naturally magnetic. This transformation happens through what they called solve et coagula. Dissolve and reconstitute. First, you must dissolve the old patterns of scarcity consciousness by bringing them into the light of awareness. Then you reconstitute new patterns based on abundance consciousness. This isn't just positive thinking, it's a fundamental restructuring of your relationship with money at the deepest level. Law 6. Sacred timing. The ancient understanding of cosmic rhythms. Every ancient civilization understood something we've completely forgotten. Wealth creation follows natural cycles, and working in harmony with these cycles multiplies your effectiveness exponentially. The Egyptians aligned their commerce with the flooding of the Nile. The Chinese developed entire economic philosophies around seasonal changes. The Mayans created sophisticated calendars that tracked optimal timing for different types of financial activities. They knew that there are natural rhythms for wealth creation, just as there are natural rhythms for planting and harvesting crops. There are times when the cosmic energies support new beginnings, times when they favor growth and expansion, times when they encourage completion and harvesting, and times when they call for rest and regeneration. This understanding goes far beyond simple planning or time management. The ancients recognized that you are a part of a vast cosmic system, and when you align your wealth-creating activities with the natural rhythms of this system, you tap into forces far greater than your individual effort. It's the difference between rowing against the current and riding with the tide. In practical terms, sacred timing means learning to sense the natural rhythms in your own life and in the larger world around you. There are times when launching new projects feels effortless, and times when it feels like pushing a boulder uphill. There are seasons for aggressive growth and seasons for patient cultivation. There are moments when opportunities ripen naturally and moments when forcing action creates resistance. The ancient masters developed the ability to sense these rhythms intuitively. They understood that timing is often more important than strategy, that a smaller action taken at the right moment can be more powerful than massive effort applied at the wrong time. They tracked both external cycles, lunar phases, seasonal changes, economic patterns, and internal cycles, their own energy rhythms, creative cycles, and periods of clarity versus confusion. Law 7. Magnetic virtue, the Greek understanding of character-based attraction. Aristotle taught his students something that modern wealth education has completely overlooked. The excellence of character naturally attracts resources and opportunities. The Greeks called this arete, virtue or excellence, and they understood it as the foundation of all lasting prosperity. This wasn't a moral philosophy divorced from practical results, it was their core business strategy. Here's why virtue creates wealth. When you consistently operate from genuine excellence, integrity, courage, justice, wisdom, and compassion, you become the kind of person that others naturally want to associate with, do business with, invest in, and support. Virtue creates what we might call a trust field around you that draws opportunities and resources. The Greeks identified specific virtues that were particularly magnetic for wealth creation. Courage allows you to take calculated risks and seized opportunities that fear-based thinking would avoid. And justice ensures that your wealth-creating activities benefit everyone involved, creating goodwill and repeat business. Temperance prevents both the greed that destroys relationships and the scarcity thinking that blocks abundance. Wisdom helps you make sound decisions and recognize valuable opportunities that others miss. But here's the crucial understanding: that virtue isn't something you perform to get wealth. It's something you embody because it aligns you with cosmic principles. When you operate from authentic virtue, you're working with the fundamental forces that govern how abundance flows in the universe. Virtue is magnetic because it is in harmony with the natural order. This is completely different from using virtue as a strategy or putting on a virtuous persona to attract wealth. The Greeks understood that virtue must be genuine to be magnetic. People can sense authenticity at a deep level, and authentic virtue creates trust, while performed virtue creates suspicion. Law 8. Compound gratitude, the Native American technology of acknowledgement. Native American cultures preserved one of the most powerful wealth multiplication technologies ever developed, the practice of wopila. Deep acknowledgement and gratitude that actually multiplies abundance. This wasn't simple thankfulness or positive thinking, it was a sophisticated understanding of how recognition creates reality. The principle works like this: gratitude isn't just a response to abundance, it's a creative force that generates abundance. When you deeply acknowledge the wealth that's already flowing in your life, you create a space for more to flow. It's like clearing a river channel. The more you acknowledge what's already moving through, the more capacity you create for increased flow. Most people practice what we might call conditional gratitude. They feel grateful when good things happen and ungrateful when things aren't going well. But compound gratitude is different. It's the practice of recognizing abundance even in situations that appear challenging or scarce. It's finding the gift in every experience, the opportunity in every setback, the wealth in every circumstance. Native American cultures understood that everything in life contains both visible and invisible gifts. The visible gifts are easy to acknowledge: money, opportunities, relationships, health, but the invisible gifts often contain more power. The lessons that make you wiser, the challenges that make you stronger, the delays that put you in the right place at the right time. Compound gratitude means acknowledging both visible and invisible gifts with equal appreciation. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. Your consciousness begins to operate from abundance as the default state rather than scarcity as the default state. You start to see opportunities where others see obstacles, possibilities where others see problems, wealth where others see lack. Law 9. Invisible wealth. The Sufi recognition of hidden abundance. The Sufi mystics developed perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of wealth ever recorded. They taught about baraka, divine blessings that manifests as abundance in forms that aren't always immediately recognizable as wealth. They understood that true prosperity flows through countless channels, and most people miss their abundance because they're only looking for it in one form. Most people define wealth narrowly: money in the bank, possessions, property, investments. But the Sufis recognized wealth in all its forms: knowledge that gives you an advantage, relationships that open doors, health that allows you to work effectively, timing that puts you in the right place at the right moment, intuition that guides you to profitable decisions, creativity that generates value, and spiritual insight that reveals opportunities others miss. They practiced what they called wealth recognition, training their consciousness to see abundance in every form it takes. A conversation that leads to a perfect opportunity is wealth. Knowledge that prevents a costly mistake is wealth. Health that allows you to work when others are sick is wealth. Timing that connects you with the right person at the right moment is wealth. When you begin to recognize invisible wealth everywhere, two things happen. First, you realize that you're already much wealthier than you thought. Wealth has been flowing to you constantly, but you've been looking for it in limited forms. Second, your consciousness becomes magnetic for wealth in all forms because you're acknowledging and appreciating the abundance that's already present. The Sufis understood that invisible wealth often precedes visible wealth. The relationship that seems purely social today becomes the business partnership that changes your life tomorrow. The skill you develop as a hobby becomes the expertise that generates income later. The spiritual practice that seems unrelated to money creates the inner foundation that allows you to handle great wealth wisely. These 5 laws work together to create what the ancients called abundance consciousness, a way of being that naturally attracts and creates prosperity in all its forms. When you practice inner alchemy, sacred timing, magnetic virtue, compound gratitude, and invisible wealth recognition, you transform from someone who chases abundance into someone who embodies abundance. Now we come to the mastery principles, the final 4 laws that transform you from someone who understands wealth consciousness into someone who lives it. These principles were the closely guarded secrets of ancient wisdom keepers, and they reveal how to sustain abundance through all of life's natural cycles. Law 10. Cyclical abundance. The Celtic understanding of natural wealth rhythms. The Celtic Druids possessed one of the most sophisticated understandings of wealth cycles ever developed. They organized their entire economic system around the wheel of the year. 8 sacred seasons that governed all aspects of life, including the creation and flow of abundance. They understood that wealth, like everything else in nature, moves in cycles, and trying to force constant growth violates natural law. The Druids identified specific wealth energies for each season. Spring was the time for planting new financial seeds, starting ventures, making investments, beginning projects that would mature over time. Summer was for the active growth and expansion, building on what was planted, nurturing development, taking advantage of abundant energy. Autumn was the harvest time, collecting profits, completing projects, gathering the rewards of earlier efforts. Winter was for rest, reflection, and preparation for the next cycle. But here's what is crucial. The Druids understood that winter, the fallow period, wasn't a time of loss or failure. It was an essential part of the abundance cycle. Just as soil needs to rest between plantings to regenerate its fertility, your wealth consciousness needs periods of rest to prepare for greater abundance. They called this sacred waiting, allowing things to incubate in the invisible realm before manifesting in the physical world. Modern culture tries to force constant growth and immediate results. Just look at the stock market, which exhausts both natural and human resources. The Celtic approach recognizes that sustainable abundance requires honoring natural rhythms. There are times for aggressive action and times for patient cultivation. There are seasons for expansion and seasons for consolidation. There are periods for external activity and periods for internal development. In practical terms, cyclical abundance means learning to recognize which season you're in personally and which season your projects or investments are in. When you're in a spring phase, focus on planting new seeds rather than expecting immediate harvests. When you're in winter, use the time for planting, learning, and inner development rather than forcing external results. Law 11. Ancestral wealth. The African philosophy of collective prosperity. African traditional cultures preserved a wealth principle that challenges the individualistic approach of modern society. The understanding that individual prosperity is inseparable from collective well-being. They developed this through the philosophy of Ubuntu, I am because we are, which recognizes that your abundance is directly connected to the abundance of your community. This isn't just moral philosophy, it's practical economics. The Ubuntu approach to wealth creation recognizes that sustainable prosperity flows through networks of reciprocal support. When you help others prosper, you create a web of relationships that naturally support your own abundance. When you hoard resources or prosper at others' expense, you weaken the very network that could sustain your wealth. African cultures understood generational wealth consciousness, the practice of making decisions not just for immediate benefit, but for the prosperity of future generations. Every major financial decision was evaluated through the lens of its impact on children, grandchildren, and the community as a whole. The long-term thinking created wealth that lasted for generations rather than disappearing in a single lifetime. They practiced wealth circulation, the understanding that money and resources need to flow through the community to maintain their vitality. Hoarding wealth was seen as blocking the natural flow of abundance, while generous circulation increased everyone's prosperity. In modern terms, ancestral wealth means building your prosperity in ways that benefit others and contribute to your community's well-being. It means thinking generationally, making financial decisions that will benefit not just you, but your children and their children. It means recognizing that your individual abundance is strengthened when it's connected to a network of mutually supportive relationships. Law 12. Energetic tithing. The Zoroastrian understanding of sacred offering. The ancient Zoroastrian tradition developed one of the most powerful wealth multiplication practices ever recorded, the principle of energetic tithing. This went far beyond giving money to religious institutions. It was a sophisticated understanding of how offering your best energy to divine light maintains and increases the flow of abundance in your life. Zoroastrians worshipped fire as a symbol of divine light and understood that this light was the source of all abundance. They developed the practice of regularly offering their highest quality energy, their time, attention, creativity, and resources to serve this divine light. This wasn't done from obligation or fear, but from recognition that abundance flows through service to something greater than individual desires. The key insight is that abundance is actually energy in motion, and when you contribute your energy to cosmic purposes, you align yourself with cosmic forces that can support you in ways that individual effort never could. It's like connecting your personal electrical system to a vast power grid. Suddenly you have access to far more energy than you could generate. Energetic tithing means identifying what represents divine light or highest good in your life and regularly offering some of your best energy in service to that. This means contributing to causes you believe in, using your talents to help others, dedicating time to spiritual practice, or creating beauty and value in the world. The specific form matters less than the quality of energy you bring to it. The Zoroastrians understood that the energy you give in service creates a magnetic field that attracts opportunities, resources, and support from unexpected sources. When you operate from generosity and service, the universe responds with generosity and support. When you hoard your energy and focus only on personal gain, you cut yourself off from cosmic assistance. This practice requires discernment. Not every request for your energy deserves a yes, and not every cause that claims to serve the highest good actually does. True energetic tithing means offering your energy where it can create the most authentic good, where it aligns with your deepest values and contributes to genuine flourishing. Law 13. Skillful means the Tibetan art of compassionate wealth creation. Tibetan Buddhism developed the most sophisticated understanding of wealth as spiritual practice through the principle of upaya, skillful means. This principle recognizes that money and resources are tools that can be used either to create suffering or to alleviate suffering, and that the consciousness you bring to wealth determines its ultimate impact. Skillful means applied to wealth involves using whatever methods serve the highest good of all beings, not just personal accumulation. This doesn't mean rejecting prosperity or living in poverty. It means creating wealth in ways that benefit everyone involved and using that wealth to contribute to the flourishing of life. The Tibetan masters understood that the process of creating wealth is as important as the wealth itself. Wealth created through exploitation, manipulation, or harm to others carries negative energy that ultimately destroys both the wealth and the person who created it. But wealth created through service, wisdom, and compassion creates positive energy that increases over time and creates benefits far beyond the original accumulation. This principle also recognizes that different approaches to wealth creation are appropriate for different people at different times. What works skillfully for one person might be harmful for another. The art of skillful means involves developing the wisdom to know what approaches align with your highest development and the courage to follow that path even when easier or more profitable options are available. In practical terms, skillful means involves regularly asking yourself, how can I create wealth in ways that serve the highest good? How can I use my prosperity to contribute to the reduction of suffering and the increase of well-being? How can my financial success become a vehicle for positive impact in the world? When you approach wealth creation as a spiritual practice, something remarkable happens. Money stops being a source of anxiety or obsession and becomes a tool for expressing your highest values. Business stops being about personal gain and becomes about serving others. Success stops being measured only in accumulation and begins to include the positive impact you create. These four mastery principles work together to create enlightened prosperity, wealth that serves not just individual needs, but the evolution of consciousness itself. When you practice cyclical abundance, ancestral wealth, energetic tithing, and skillful means, you join the ranks of the ancient masters who understood that true prosperity is sacred responsibility. Now, I want to step back and see these 13 forgotten wealth laws for what they truly are. They aren't just techniques for getting rich. They're pathways to becoming the kind of person who naturally creates and sustains abundance. They are invitations to join an ancient lineage of human beings who understand that wealth consciousness is actually a form of spiritual development. When you embark on this path, you're not just changing your bank account. You're transforming your entire relationship with life itself. You're moving from scarcity consciousness, which sees the universe as fundamentally lacking, to abundance consciousness, which recognizes the universe as fundamentally generous. This transformation affects every aspect of your existence, your relationships, your health, your creativity, your sense of purpose, and your connection to something greater than yourself. Every time you practice one of these ancient wealth laws, you're not just affecting your own life. You're healing generational patterns that may have been limiting your family for decades or even centuries. Think about the financial struggles that your parents experienced, the money fears that your grandparents carried, the scarcity beliefs that have been passed down through your family like invisible inheritance. When you break through to authentic abundance consciousness, you're not just creating wealth for yourself. You're breaking generational poverty consciousness for your children and their children. You're becoming the ancestor who changed everything, The one who said, "This stops with me," to patterns of financial struggle and limitation. Your children will grow up in a completely different energetic field around money. Instead of absorbing scarcity beliefs and financial anxiety, they will absorb abundance consciousness and prosperity wisdom. Here's something remarkable. Even when one person in a community begins operating from authentic abundance consciousness, it creates ripples that affect everyone around them. Your transformation becomes a permission slip for others to step into their own prosperity. Your success using ancient principles demonstrates that there's another way to create wealth beyond the scarcity-based methods that dominate our culture. The impact extends far beyond your immediate circle. When you practice sacred exchange in your business dealings, you're contributing to the healing of our economic system. When you operate from aligned action rather than desperate hustle, you're modeling a sustainable approach to success. When you embody magnetic virtue, you're raising the standard for what business relationships can be. Every person who learns ancient wealth principles from your example becomes a seed of transformation in their own community. We're actually at a pivotal moment in human history where ancient wisdom is being recovered and integrated with modern understanding. You're a part of a growing movement of people who are rejecting scarcity-based systems and returning to abundance-based principles. You're helping to birth a new economic consciousness that serves life rather than exploits it. Now, as you master these ancient wealth laws, you begin to understand something profound. Abundance is not a personal blessing. It's a spiritual responsibility. The universe doesn't give you wealth so you can hoard it or use it for personal pleasure. It gives you wealth so that you can become a steward of resources that serves the highest good. This is why every ancient wisdom tradition taught that prosperity comes with obligations. The wealthy Egyptian pharaohs were expected to ensure the prosperity of their entire kingdom. The successful Hindu merchants were required to support spiritual teachers and community projects. The prosperous Celtic chieftains were responsible for the well-being of their clans. Modern culture has disconnected wealth from responsibility, creating the illusion that abundance is purely personal. But the ancient masters understood that individual prosperity is always connected to collective well-being. When you become truly wealthy using these principles, you naturally want to use your resources to create positive impacts. At the deepest level, these ancient wealth laws are teaching you how to recognize something extraordinary. Prosperity consciousness is actually a reflection of divine consciousness. The abundance that flows through the universe, the creativity that generates countless stars, the generosity that sustains all of life, the intelligence that coordinates vast ecosystem, this same abundant nature exists within you. When you align with ancient wealth principles, you're not learning to manipulate external circumstances to get what you want. You're learning to express the abundant nature that is your deepest essence. This recognition transforms everything. Instead of feeling like you're fighting against the universe to get your needs met, you realize you're collaborating with cosmic intelligence to express abundance. The abundant universe you see around you, the endless creativity, the inexhaustible energy, the profound generosity that sustains all life. This same abundance lives within you, waiting to be expressed through your unique gifts, your authentic service, and your alignment with these timeless principles. These 13 laws work together as a complete system, each one amplifying the others, creating a wealth consciousness that our ancestors would recognize, but our modern world has forgotten. Sacred exchange teaches you to create value, while aligned action ensures that value flows through your authentic gifts. Generous scarcity breaks through limitations, while effortless accumulation allows abundance to build naturally. Inner alchemy transforms your consciousness, while sacred timing aligns your actions with cosmic rhythms. Each law supports and strengthens the others. When you practice magnetic virtue, it amplifies your compound gratitude. When you recognize invisible wealth, it deepens your understanding of cyclical abundance. When you embrace ancestral wealth, it enriches your practice of energetic tithing. And when you apply skillful means, it transforms all your wealth creation into spiritual practice. This is how the ancients created prosperity that lasted for millennia, not through individual techniques used in isolation, but through complete systems that aligned every aspect of their lives with the fundamental laws of abundance. The most important words you will hear today is that you are not meant to struggle. You're not meant to lack. You're not meant to apologize for abundance. You're not meant to feel guilty about prosperity. You're not meant to accept limitation. You're not meant to live in fear about money. You're not meant to die having never expressed your full potential. The ancients knew that abundance is your birthright. The question isn't whether these laws work. Civilizations were built on them. Egyptian dynasties prospered for 3,000 years, using sacred exchange and inner alchemy. Roman merchants created vast wealth through magnetic virtue and sacred timing. Hindu traders built trade networks that spanned continents using aligned action and skillful means. Celtic communities sustained abundance for generations through cyclical abundance and ancestral wealth. The question isn't whether you're worthy of abundance. Your very existence is proof of your worthiness. The question isn't whether there's enough wealth to go around. The universe demonstrates infinite abundance every moment through its endless creativity and generosity. The only question is, are you ready to step into your ancestral birthright of abundance? Are you ready to stop struggling with scarcity consciousness and start flowing with prosperity principles? Are you ready to become the ancestor who changed everything for your family line? Are you ready to join the ranks of those who understand that wealth creation is actually a form of spiritual service? Here's how to begin integrating these ancient laws into modern life. Choose 3 laws that resonated most strongly with you as I shared them. Maybe it was sacred exchange. Perhaps it was inner alchemy. It might have been cyclical abundance. Start with these 3 laws. For the next 30 days, focus entirely on integrating these 3 principles into your daily life. Practice sacred exchange by asking, how can I create more value than I receive in every transaction? Apply inner alchemy by observing your internal patterns around money and consciously choosing abundance over scarcity. Honor cyclical abundance by recognizing what season you're in and aligning your actions accordingly. Or choose 3 other options. Don't try to implement all 13 laws at once. After 30 days of focusing on your chosen 3 laws, add 3 more and then build them up. Build your personal wealth wisdom practice around the laws. I want you to understand something profound. You're not learning something new. You're remembering something ancient. Somewhere in your lineage, your ancestors knew these laws. They may have been Celtic druids, Egyptian merchants, or Hindu traders. When you practice these laws, you're not just creating personal wealth. You're healing your ancestral line and blessing future generations. You're not just changing your bank account. You're stepping into your role as a steward of cosmic abundance. The wealth that flows to you through these practices is not separate from who you are. It's an expression of who you are. Your ancestors are cheering you on. The ancient masters who preserve these laws are celebrating your return to wisdom. The future generations who will benefit from your transformation are sending you gratitude across time. Welcome home to your abundance. Welcome back to your prosperity. Welcome to the forgotten wealth laws that have been waiting lifetimes for you to remember. Welcome to the reality revolution.